welcome back to my Halloween month reviews, and for this video, this is gonna be a different film, because this is not a very popular film. Some people have seen it, but it's not well received as some other films. This film is a ghost movie, and when people talk about ghost films, they would talk about films like Poltergeist or The Conjuring, but none of them really talk about this film. And this is a film that I think is kind of underrated, and that film is The Frighteners, directed by Peter Jackson, and it stars Michael J. Fox as Frank Banister, who after going through a terrible accident, he is able to see ghosts everywhere and try to help people get ghosts out of their homes. So he's basically Haley Joel Osment in The Sixth Sense. Actually, this film came out 3 years before The Sixth Sense, and he investigates some weird murders that have been happening in this small town. People have been going through heart attacks and dying, and he finds out that they are caused by the Grim Reaper himself. And he's only able to know that by seeing certain numbers on people's foreheads, letting him know that that's the one person that's going to be killed by death next. And Frank has to figure out how to stop death from killing more innocent people. And I am going to let you guys know that this is not going to contain spoilers, so don't worry, I'm not going to reveal any big moments that happen in the film, so you're completely safe seeing this video, because I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys have not seen or heard of The Frighteners. When this movie was released in theaters, it did do well for audience members and critics, but unfortunately it didn't work out well at the box office. And the movie also dealt with some problems behind the scenes in regards to the post-production, and the MPAA wanted to make it rated R when originally they wanted it to be PG-13. And you can really tell when you watch the film, because when you watch the film itself, knowing that it's rated R, it doesn't feel like it's rated R, except for a couple of bloody moments that would happen a couple of times in the film. But there's no nudity in it, no F-bombs, no like absurd amounts of gore, so there's really nothing about this film that screams rated R. And what really catches a lot of people's eyes with this film is that this is directed by Peter Jackson, who is known for directing all 3 of the Lord of the Rings films. That's right, the guy that did the Lord of the Rings trilogy did a horror comedy. And in today's time, this is the kind of film that you really wouldn't expect Peter Jackson to do, except he has done a couple of horror comedies like this film in the past, way before he did Lord of the Rings, where he did horror comedies like Bad Taste and Dead Alive. Like, he did quite a bit of horror comedies back then, and he did sneak in some horror moments in his Lord of the Rings trilogy as well. And if you've seen all 3 of these films, I'm sure you can already think of which horror moments he put in those films. And people look at this film and say it's a very underrated horror comedy of his, and I'm one of those people. However, I do have some issues with it, which of course I'm gonna save later. And rewatching this film for this video, I was surprised at how much ridiculous and over-the-top humor there was. Like the kind that'll make you go, what the heck did I just watch? And there is quite a lot of that, and gratefully it's the good kind of humor where it does make you laugh when that happens. And for whatever reason, this movie decided to sneak in some random Stanley Kubrick references. Like, there's a reference to The Shining at one point, and there's even a character that is similar to another character from Full Metal Jacket, and having the same actor from Full Metal Jacket as well. And this movie definitely goes for that kind of humor as well as the over-the-top humor, and it's nothing you would really expect from Peter Jackson now, even though he's done this kind of stuff with his earlier films. And another great thing about the humor is that it doesn't mess up the tone that they're going for. It still takes itself very seriously, and it gets you invested in what's going on. Like Michael J. Fox's character, for instance, Frank Banister, who's dealt with some trauma after going through a serious accident that he hasn't recovered from mentally. And since we're talking about Frank Banister, for instance, let's talk about him for a while. Michael J. Fox does do a really good job as the character, but the character does start off as a little little unlikable because those ghosts that he's just investigating to get into people's homes are just scams for him to make more money. Because some of those ghosts that he's trying to catch are actually friends of his that do hang out with him a lot. But when you learn more about his backstory and why he's living in this unfinished house, you do get to feel some sympathy for him. And when he tries to investigate these murders, people look at him as a fraud and think that he's doing all these murders himself, when in reality someone else is. But it's from someone that no one else can see except him, so he's forced to have to go and find this killer himself. And when he learns more about death and these murders that are happening, it becomes a more interesting murder mystery film that does keep you invested, making us realize that something else sinister is going on relating to the Grim Reaper. And when you learn more about this movie's version of death and why he's killing these certain people, it's actually a very dark and very terrifying reveal, especially when you pay attention to the little hints that happen throughout the film that are supposed to connect to the villain of the film, Death. And that's what I really liked about this film. It's a murder mystery that gets you invested on what's going on, and when you see what is going on, it gives it a very more sinister and dark feeling. And the rest of the acting besides Michael J. Fox is pretty solid, and there is some over-the-top acting from some of the other actors as well, but it's the kind of over-the-top acting that does work for this film because this is a horror comedy and you have some characters that are doing some very over-the-top acting. Like, you have one character in this film that is very over-the-top named Milton Dammers, who is played by Jeffrey Combs, who is well known for movies like Reanimator. His character is an FBI agent that has seen some very serious and dark stuff like cults, and for whatever reason throws up when women yell at him. So obviously his character is a piece of crap when he talks to women. And this isn't a spoiler, he's one of the side villains of the film that does do some pretty bad stuff throughout the story. So as you can tell, this movie is weird, but the good kind of weird, where it's very funny, it's very chilling, and it can be pretty scary. And this movie definitely fits in as one of those horror movies that feels different and out there. Like, it's similar to the Evil Dead films when it comes to the horror comedy. Like, when I was watching the film myself, I couldn't help but think of Evil Dead and how that movie uses the dark humor and the horror mixed with it. This is also a very well shot movie where we get establishing shots of the small town that Frank lives in, and then some of the nighttime scenes whenever something dark and serious is happening. Danny Elfman's score is also really good. It definitely works for some of the creepy moments, and I think it's one of his more underrated scores for his films. A lot of people talk about his other films like Edward Scissorhands, the Tim Burton Batman film, and Spider-Man, but they don't really talk about this score from this film. Now, like I said earlier, this isn't a great film. I do have some issues with it, and one of them is obviously the CGI. It's easily the most dated thing about this film, and this movie uses it a lot, like with Death, for instance, and whenever you see CGI happen, it looks bad. It looks that noticeable. It comes off as a sore thumb. It doesn't ruin the experience, but I just couldn't help but notice how dated the CGI was. There's also a romance between two characters in the film that I thought felt out of left field and didn't feel like it was fully developed throughout the rest of the film, and that's definitely supposed to be one of the more important parts of the film that I think they should have resolved more. Speaking of things that don't get fully resolved, my last issue with the film is the way it ends. No spoilers, of course, but the way they end things and resolve some things with some characters felt rushed and didn't feel like they were fully finished for the characters. And there's supposed to be important moments for the characters, but for whatever reason, this movie decides to rush some of those and say, we're not gonna delve into more of those. We just want to end the movie already. Now, regardless of those issues, I still recommend watching The Frighteners if you haven't yet. It's a very fun and very campy, over-the-top horror comedy where it has good acting, good scares, really good cinematography, a great score, and a likable lead. I'm gonna give The Frighteners a B+. So guys, if you have seen The Frighteners, what did you think about it? Do you think it's an underrated masterpiece, or do you think that this movie was terrible? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you like this video and you are enjoying the Halloween month reviews, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss a thing, because it helps my channel grow. Hit the notification bell so you know what other videos I'm posting. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.